What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the 7th video in an 8-part series on how to launch a podcast. I'm so happy you've joined me for this one. I am going to be talking about how to edit audio for your podcast. But before we get into that, if you haven't already checked the other videos out in this series, video number 1, I talk about why you should launch a podcast. In the second video, I talk about the prep that is needed before you launch your own podcast series. Number 3, I talk about what equipment you need to launch a podcast. In the fourth video, I talk about what makes a great script and why scripts are important to help guide you through, whether it's your YouTube interview series or your podcast, whatever content you're producing, why scripts are important. Number 5 is how you lock down a great interview. In the last video, number 6, I talked about things to think about when you're actually recording or about to record or prepping your guest for the episode. And like I said, in this video, it is about editing the audio. Before I jump into these tips, it's important to know that editing audio, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult things about starting a podcast. And if you talk about those barriers to entry, the editing process may be that barrier that prevents a lot of people from getting into starting their own podcast. Editing audio comes down to two things. It either takes time or money. So if you are someone who is fortunate enough to be in a position where you have the finances where you can hire out somebody to do that editing for you, and you don't want the headache of learning how to do it, then by all means, there is nothing wrong with that. Do that, hire it out, have somebody else do it. It is worth the investment because it does take some time and there's a learning curve to editing audio, especially if you don't have any background doing that or editing video or anything along those lines. But if you're like I was, I didn't have that luxury of paying somebody else to edit the audio, so I learned how to do it myself. What I want to tell you though is I just said it was super hard, but it's doable. There are so many resources out there. Hopefully this 8-part series has been helpful for you on the podcast journey, but there are so many other YouTube videos that are really helpful when it comes to editing audio and that can break through different steps, whether you're using Adobe Audition or you're using a different program, that really talk about some of the things that you should do and you should consider when editing audio. This video is going to be about my experience, what I use, what I do to the audio in 2 different examples, and I've talked about this throughout the series. I have 2 podcasts. So one is through my work, the Remax Hustle podcast, where we interview real estate agents and broker owners and other people. We had Harry Mack, a freestyle rapper, on once. That was a cool episode. And the other podcast / YouTube interview series, because it's primarily YouTube interview, but we strip the audio from that and have a podcast that's about crypto. It's called Show Me the Crypto. It's about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And in that example, we're less worried about the audio quality in terms of things like breath noise and ahs and ums and all of those things. So this should give you 2 examples of how strict you want to edit and how clean you want that audio sounding. Remax Hustle podcast, we're really focused on making it sound crisp and clear. The other example, it's a little less so. So hopefully one of these solutions works for you. If you are using a different program, if you can't afford Adobe Audition, no worries. There are so many other resources out there that can help you with your program. Check out one of them and then come back to this series and make sure you watch that 8th and final video. If you are planning on using Audition, here are a couple things that have worked for me. So in the last video, I talked a little bit about whether you're doing an interview in person or if you're doing it remotely through something like Zencastr or Zoom. But in either of these situations, you want to record the audio into a WAV file. The WAV file is a little bit higher quality than an MP3. An MP3 is what your final podcast product is going to be in, but you want the WAV file coming into your working Adobe Audition file that you're going to be actually treating and editing the audio on. So you bring in the 2 WAV files into Adobe Audition, and I like using their podcast template where it gives you about 4 different layers where you can If you have an intro that was done by somebody on Fiverr, you can bring that in at the very beginning. And if you have a commercial, you can put that on maybe the third layer. And then you have audio of the host on layer 1 and then audio of the guest on layer 2. So with every interview or episode I do 4 things to the audio. The first is I do noise reduction. So I capture what is called a noise print of the audio, and I try to find somewhere where there was no sound going. So if I hit that record button and it's a face-to-face interview, before I start talking right away and the guest starts talking, I hit record and I let silence happen for a couple of seconds. And that gives me just a little window where I can take that little sound clip, and that is the one that I am going to capture a noise print, because there are room sounds that we might not be aware of, but maybe it's a fan that is humming or something along those lines. They're happening and it might be distracting for the audience. So you're taking that little clip where nobody is talking, and then you're going to capture the noise print, and then you're going to select the entire audio clip and you're going to do the noise reduction process. On the screen, you're going to be seeing the levels that I do it to. I am by no means saying that this is the only way to do it, but these are the levels that I like to use and what seem to work for me. The second step I take in treating the audio while still the whole clip is selected is I do the 20 bands option. And I watched a YouTube video that was how to create great sound, so I can't take the credit for all of these steps, but these were the levels that were suggested through that video. So you'll see them on the screen where I select the different levels to, and that is the levels I treat for the entire host audio. And I do the same for the guest audio as well. This whole process I'm going through for the host audio, I'm going to duplicate this process a second time for the guest audio. The third step is the single band compressor. Again, these were levels that I found through my research on YouTube videos, and they have seemed to work for me. And the final step is a normalized process where I am bringing all the audio to a certain level. So a certain decibel level, and it's gonna bring everything consistent so I don't have those really, really loud sounds and then really, really quiet sounds afterwards. It all sort of equalizes and brings it within a certain decibel range. I am not an audio expert, so if you are watching this and you're thinking, Wade, you are missing so much, or you're not explaining that correctly, my apologies. But like I said, I was a beginner when it came to podcasting, and this was the information I learned, so I wanted to share it to all of you of this editing process. From there, I go through, and when it's the Remax Hustle podcast, I'm really particular. So I bring down things like breath noise, which seems crazy, but I just like the sound of that really smooth from sentence to sentence. Most listeners won't notice that. They won't be distracted by things like breath noise because that's pretty natural, but it depends what style you're going for with your interviews. In some interviews, I even eliminate things like ahs and ums. I drag that little sound wave and I bring it down all the way, which you can see me doing right now on the screen. That helps eliminate the ahs and ums. And again, it is something your guest, maybe he or she won't even notice that you did it, but they may be appreciative of it. If they say or ah every single sentence, it's not realistic, especially if it's in the middle of a sentence. But here and there, when it's in the middle, so let's say they have a gap of 10 seconds where they're thinking about what they're going to say, I'll shorten that up, I'll tighten that up, I'll eliminate the and then I'll split the clip before and after they do that, and I'll bring it together as well to really clean it up and speed up the pace of that episode. For Show Me the Crypto, which is the other podcast I work on, I'm way less stressed about all of those things like breath noise and ahs and ums. I pretty much take the audio quality, I do those 4 steps I talked about at the beginning, but then I pretty much leave it unless a guest said something completely wrong or they had a huge gap, then I'll try to tighten that up a little bit. But otherwise, I'm more focused on the video, making sure that the video quality looks good. The audio is kind of an afterthought where we're uploading it for the benefit of the audience that prefers podcasts to YouTube videos. So it's not the primary focus in that case. Again, it's whatever your preference is, whatever style, and whatever amount of time you have to work on editing audio, because the Remax Hustle podcast, those episodes, they take a few hours to edit, whereas Show Me the Crypto, that is a quicker process. So it depends on what your needs are, what your timing is, and if you're hiring it out, what your budget is for doing that. I hope this episode on how to edit audio for your podcast was beneficial. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Hit that notifications bar. I'm going to be doing other 8-part series. Did I say notifications bar? Notifications bell. I'm going to be doing other 8-part series throughout the year on various communications topics, so you don't want to miss those. If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it.